Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Adam.
This is Tim.
And I'm Jen.
We're going to give our hot takes on the two games we just finished playing, Herbaceous and Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers.
Before we provide a description of the games we're playing today, and yes, you heard that right, games, we have two hot takes coming right up. We wanted to remind you that you can join in on our conversations on Twitter at BG_hot takes or on Facebook at Board Game Hot Takes. Follow us for the latest conversations about the games we're playing, share your gameplay experience, or let us know if our podcast inspired you to try something new. And if you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in order to help more people find the show. Now I'll hand things over to Tim, who's going to jump into a description of the first game.
Herbaceous is a set collection card game where players are herb collectors trying to grow and store the most valuable collections of herbs. On their turn, a player will draw an herb card off the deck and either place it in their private garden, where it can only be used by that player, or in the public garden, where it can be used by any players. They will then draw a second herb card and place it in the opposite garden of the first herb. Optionally, at the start of their turn, a player can choose to pot a set of herbs in one of the 4 containers available to them. They will then choose any number of cards in their private garden and in the public garden and fill one of the pot cards in front of them. Each of the 4 pots has unique scoring requirements, including having unique herbs, the same type of herbs, pairs of matching herbs, or some special herbs. And based on the number of herb cards you pot during a potting action, that will determine the number of points that pot is worth at the end of the game. The first player to pot the 1, 2, and 3 point bonus herb cards will get a special 5-point biscuit card. When there are no herb cards left in the deck, the game ends and all players have one final turn to take a pot action. After the final turn, all players score their pots and the player with the most points wins. Herbaceous was designed by Eduardo Baraf and Steve Finn and published by Dr. Finn's Games. So let's get into the conversation on Herbaceous. And let's start with the mechanisms. Adam, anything that stands out to you from a mechanism perspective with this game?
I like how it kind of starts out blank slate. That's the first thing I notice. And all you can do right at the beginning is draw a card, decide to keep it or put it in the public pile. And then you draw a second card, and whatever you didn't do the first time, keep it or offer it up to the public. You do the other thing. So it's just from that one simple mechanism spawns this whole emergent gameplay, which I think that's kind of neat.
I like one of the things I like about it that's unique for a fairly simple little set collection game is that the 4 pots have different scoring conditions. So it gives you some little mini different goals to go for in the course of the game. And even if you get kind of blocked by one of your goals, let's say, hey, there's all the right cards out there to get a whole bunch of unique herbs. And then Jen comes in here and, she pots first and she takes a bunch of herbs before I can get to it. But she left a couple, other cards that duplicate up with mine. So now I can go after the sets of herbs goal, for example. So I like that, you're not always just going after one goal and then someone takes it and you can't do anything. You can always switch to a different goal and kind of, try to build up a different pot in a better way. So I always thought that was keeps it a little more interesting than a traditional, simple little card game. What about you, Jen?
Jen, any sage words about the mechanisms of the game?
Well, first I'd like to say that people are not going to like this podcast unless they like herb puns. So they're just going to not have a very good time tonight unless you want to hear Adam with his herb puns. So with that important note being said, I just like the press your luck component of it. We played 2 games tonight. The first game, we realized, I think all of us kind of realized, we definitely should have been doing a little bit more in certain areas earlier. But we had been pushing towards a certain goal that we had our sights set on and missed other opportunities. So the second time around, you could tell that we were all a little more strategic and where we were pressing our luck and when we were decided to go early and get the points and just kind of take that risk in a different way.
Yeah, I think the push your luck is really fun. And also, I want to go back to Adam mentioned the mechanism that, when you are taking your turn, you're basically taking a card off the top of the deck, choosing which garden it goes in, and then you choose the next card off the deck and it goes in the opposite garden. You have to make a decision about whether that card's valuable for your personal garden before you get to see the second card. And that's a fun, tight little thing because sometimes it could be like, that card could be a little bit okay for me. Maybe it'll help me get one of the bonus goals, but I really want to go for one of those, the special herbs that has points on it. So I'll put that in the central garden and then hope that there's a better card coming up for me. And that's some fun conflict. I'll keep going back to the fact that it is a very light, simple game, very simple rules, but there are pretty fun decisions throughout. And that's one of the sources of those decisions.
For me, that player interaction that was around those goals was the best part about it, or the most fulfilling, because the first turn, we were all kind of chasing the herbed biscuit or whatever it may be for its exciting 5-point bonus. And then a lot of action happened around that in order to get there first or to block someone else from getting it. And in the end, we played 2 entire games. Nobody got that biscuit. So I think we were focusing on that in that sense, and we didn't get anywhere. But it did have a lot of fun on the side. And so I know that between myself and Steve, who's not on the podcast with us tonight, we went back and forth and blocked each other and had to sacrifice and then settle, all because we were trying to get that one bonus.
Right. No one was quite diligent enough to grab that herb biscuit.
So good. So good, Adam.
But the game's great. I like being able to see who has planted in certain pots already, so you can see what they're going for still and what they're not, what they don't necessarily need anymore. So you can use that to your advantage. You can leave stuff out there that's going to help you later because you know the other players around the table can't pick it up. So that's kind of a nice mechanic too. It's very simple rules, but so much going on here, which is cool.
Yeah, that's some really sage advice, Adam, and I really appreciate you.
Tim, I have to tell you that those words are going to come out of my mouth as well in that same moment.
Beat you to it. Just like the biscuit. That was my biscuit right there. I think we can jump into the production of the game. Jen, anything that stands out to you from a production perspective?
From production, I think that this game is gorgeous. I just like looking at the cards. I don't know if I could plant an entire herb garden in my backyard and have anything thrive, that would be a perfect backyard world for me. And we, during the course of this game, talked about we had gone to lavender farms and visited in Hawaii, and we'd actually had herbed biscuits before. But for me, it was all the theme. It was all the visual experience and just kind of seeing that. It was enjoyable.
The card art, I mean, really, that's all this is. It's a deck of cards. It's Beth Sobel's. She's really known for doing kind of realistic nature related art. She just knocks it out of the park here. They're all beautiful, a little bit of color, in there on some of the cards, and they stand out enough for just being a bunch of little green herbs. They all stand out. You can kind of differentiate them even without reading the names on them. But they're really pretty. You can almost taste the herbs as you're sitting there playing it. An herb would come up and I'd be like, oh man, I remember cooking with that rosemary before, you kind of have the flavors coming there in your mind while watching it, because they just really look like the actual herbs you're cooking with. So yeah, it was beautiful, beautiful art there. What about you, Adam? Anything else to add on production?
I mean, I feel like both of you guys really meant what you said. The art is beautiful. How many different suits? There's 7 base herbs, and then there's a 10 if there's the 3 extra little bonus herbs. So and it's just, so that's 10 unique, and they're all just so beautiful.
I was going to say that when it comes to herb puns, Adam is kind of a big deal.
That's good.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, the card, by the way, the last thing about the production, the card quality is decent. I played with this in person. We happen to play on Tabletop Simulator tonight, but I played with the real version. It's high quality cards, really nice little deck of cards. So
I own a copy too. I think it's linen finish.
Sweet. All right. So sounds good. Let's move into favorite moments of the game. There was a great moment in the game. There's a mechanism where basically if a person is able to pot the 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point bonus cards, that's when they get the biscuit that we've discussed a couple times here. And there was a point in the game where Steve started out, he had the 2 and 1 point cards, I think. So he got those really early, and we're like, he's just got to draw that 3 point card. He's going to get that biscuit this game. And then kind of out of the blue in one turn, Jen ended up getting the 2 and 3 point bonuses in 2 turns in a row. So all of a sudden we see that it's as soon as one of them gets the card, then they're going to win it. And so Jen takes her turn and she draws a card, and she's like, okay, I could use that for a set. So she puts it into her private garden, and the card she flips off the top of the deck is the 1 point bonus card that she needs to complete her set and get the biscuit. And so it's coming around, and Adam and I have no use for that bonus card. We don't have a chance of getting the biscuit. So we just kind of ignore that. Comes back to Steve. Now he really needs the 3 point bonus card in order to get his biscuit, which he's been working for the whole time. If he pots his jar that lets him do those bonus cards, he can't do it again in the game. If he doesn't take it, Jen's going to get it. She's going to get the biscuit out from under him. If he does take it, he can't get the biscuit anymore. So he's like put in this impossible situation. Of course, he took it so that nobody could get the biscuit. But it was a fun moment where everyone was just excited to see who was going to get the card up. And it came to Steve, and he knew he had to sacrifice it for the greater good and not letting Jen have that biscuit. And that was just, it was a fun moment in a game that is, again, fairly light, and you wouldn't think has a lot of standout moments like that. But for us, that was a great round. What about you, Jen? Any other moments that stood out to you in this game?
For me, that was it. It was a lot of fun. I like the interaction that went along with that. And we're all smiling about it right now. And so it was a really enjoyable part of the game. And like Adam says, this is smooth. So in a sense, the whole game was enjoyable, but we were laughing. It was fun. I'd do that again.
What about you, Adam?
The battle for the herb biscuit was nice. A dubious moment of the game is when you, Tim, decided you would investigate the deck and see what other cards were available. Just out of the blue, you decided to go ahead and search the entire deck. Objection. That is not what was happening. I was trying to help Steve and Jen figure out if it was even worth for them to go for the biscuit, because we hadn't played the game before. We were trying to figure out if it was even possible. I thought that should be public information how many were going to be in the deck. So it was not for my sake. It was for other people's sake, not my fault.
Adam, if you'd like to call a witness, I'm willing to be here and I'm willing to testify. Tim is not telling the truth.
Totally telling the truth. I mean, maybe still suspicious, but it wasn't for suspicious reasons. But all right, fair enough.
I don't think that move chived with anybody at the table.
I want to clap. I just want to clap. That was great.
All right. So let's go to the next question. Would you request to play the game again? Jen, let's start with you. What do you think?
Absolutely. It was fun. The first game was a little bit longer, but once we all kind of got used to it, it was a really quick play. I go back to my oldest child a lot. I think that he is right at that edge where he could play it. And I really enjoyed it. And I'd just like to point out that the second game, I won by like 15 points. So who wouldn't want to play that game again? So enjoyable. Yes. 2 thumbs up.
All right. Sounds good. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, the game's great. This is the first time for me playing it at 4, and I thought it did quite well. If I played it at 2 before, 4-player was especially fun. So absolutely play it again.
Nice. All right. Well, I will not try to keep your guys' thoughts at bay, and I will jump right into my my feeling is, I actually really like it. And I think this is it's great timing that we did this, because we just covered Capital Lux 2 last week, which is also a card game fairly similar in weight. For me, this is the right level of downtime, the right level of thinkiness that needs to come into a card game of this scale. And so of the two, I would pick this, because to me it's a light, it's a quick game, it's breezy, it's just fun. It's kind of it's a fun little activity you can do without putting too much thought into it, but it still has some fun decisions in it. I like the push your luck mechanisms. So yeah, to me, there aren't a whole lot of small box little card games that I'm going to be requesting. This is a great filler that if I had 15 to 20 minutes with some friends before a game or afterwards, I would be happy to pull this out anytime. So definitely would request this again.
It was a great game, and no one tonight has been saffron any of the puns that we've laid out there.
I don't even get that one. I don't even know what that was supposed to say.
That was beautiful. I don't know how you can deny that one.
I'm going to go ahead and say that maybe on this podcast, we're going to put like a warning label so that people know exactly what they're getting into. But
how bad it's been horrible. Yeah.
But yeah, the fun level is outstanding. So this is why I like to play games with you guys. But yes, amazing.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, that'll wrap up our conversation of Herbaceous. Kept that one nice and short, because we're going to jump into a second game tonight, and that is Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a description, and then we'll jump in with our thoughts on the game. Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers, is a roll and write game where each player races for wealth and fame as a 16th century Indian Raja. Each round, 8 dice of 4 different colors are rolled, and players will take their turns drafting one of the dice and using the related icon to mark off items on their player sheets and gaining the related bonuses. The orange dice represent palace nobles that will give you an immediate bonus action. When you take one, you mark the space next to that noble in the orange section of your player sheet. Purple dice represent goods that you can circle on your player sheet. When you later take a sell action, you can cross off those goods to receive the money indicated underneath the goods sold. Green dice represent roads that you can use to connect to buildings in your province, and when a building has 2 roads connected to it, you'll receive fame. Blue dice represent river actions, and when you take one, you mark the leftmost river space with that icon on your player sheet and get the related bonus. Anytime you receive fame, you cross off a space on your fame track that extends around the outside of your player sheet, and when you receive money, you cross off a space on the money track that extends the other direction around your sheet. When a player's fame and money meet on the player sheet, that starts the end of the game, and all players finish the round, and the player that has the most negative gap between fame and money wins the game. Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers, was designed by Inca Brand and Marcus Brand and published by R&R Games. All right, so let's get into the conversation. So let's talk about the mechanisms of Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers. Now that is a mouthful of a title, so going forward, I'll just say Rajas Dice when we're talking about it. So let's start with Jen this time. Anything that stood out for you from a mechanisms perspective on Rajas of the Ganges? Sorry. Raja's dice. Keep that short.
For me, it was rolling right. I didn't even have any idea what that meant before we played tonight. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was rolling right. And so as we're playing, it's this complex version of Yahtzee. And then we got to talking about Yahtzee and how we all did have some affection for it whatsoever in some different, level. And so I really enjoyed that. There was thinking involved and there was critical thinking involved, but there was a safety net in that you were choosing essentially one dice to start your turn. And then that one dice could get you, one move and a couple points, or that one dice could give you, and I won't take Tim's thunder from this one, but that one dice could give you and I might be exaggerating, but 15 opportunities to score over the course of that turn. And so it was much more complex than it looked like. It was, in some ways it was much simpler than it was because I looked at this board and Steve was describing it. And I think at one point my eyes might've glazed over, but once you start it, there's a simplicity to it that is really beautiful, but there's also so much going on that your brain is constantly working. And so I know I kind of went in a circle on that one, but I think when you re-listen to it, both of you, as well as the audience, are going to be like, exactly. That's exactly what it feels like to play this game. You're welcome.
Jen, you really comboed that answer together, much like Raja's dice. It is, if you look at the sheet, right? This is a roll and write, as Jen mentioned, and it is a sheet. But if you look at the sheet, it is just full of icons. That's basically what you're looking at is 60, 70 icons and some little spaces to knock off on the board. So it looks like I have no idea how I'm going to learn this game or play it. And you do have to, when teaching the game, you have to kind of explain what some of the icons do. But it's actually pretty simple because basically there are 4 colors of dice, as I mentioned in the rules description. And so when you choose which dice to play, you just pick one of those 4 colors of the section of the board, and it tells you exactly what to do there. So it's similar to what we mentioned in Castles of Burgundy, where your decision space gets limited fairly quickly. Even though seems like there could be a billion things to do, you're limited by the dice that are available to you, and then those dice get limited in that round based on what other people have chosen before. So it actually is not as complicated. The decision space is pretty quick. The choices are not that hard, but there's a lot of fun comboing that happens in there where if you pick the right dice at the right time, then that triggers, you do an action, that triggers another action, that combos and does another action. So even with a fairly small decision space, there's a lot of stuff that you can do and that you can, that can happen in a turn. So what about you, Adam? What stands out to you?
Yeah, so from this initial 8 dice pool, you have this amazing domino effect of branching options you can choose, and finding the right way to link those together is really the heart of this game. It's pretty cool. Mad props to Steve for teaching us this one.
The fact that it's a roll and write, I think, is worth calling out here. As Jen mentioned, she had never played a modern roll and write before, so her familiarity with roll and writes was Yahtzee, right? This does a couple things different than Yahtzee. Obviously, it's more fun than Yahtzee, so that's number one. Number two is that when you roll the dice, it's a pool that everybody has available to them, but you don't just use all the dice. So in Yahtzee, you got to sit there and wait for someone to take their rolls, and it's not a big deal, but you're not actually interacting. In this one, you roll the dice, everyone's going to be able to pull from those dice, but you take turns taking them. So everyone doesn't get the exact same decisions in a game. And I thought that was really important. When you're talking about a sheet of paper, everyone's got the exact same sheet of paper and theoretically the same decisions because it's the same dice. But those immediately, your directions diverge quickly because Adam picks a dice, he does one thing, well, that dice isn't available to me, so I have to pick a different dice right in the first round, and that kind of changes the direction of my whole strategy over the course of the game. So as a roll and write, it's obviously a little more complex than your traditionals, but for me, for a modern roll and write, this was one of the better ones that I've seen or that I've played. A lot of fun, decisions, but again, not too much overhead from a thought perspective.
A piece that I had talked about already when we were playing it is that you don't have any control over your turn order. Somebody starts and you go in that order, and then it rotates one down, and then it rotates one down again, and rotates one down. But at a certain point, you're the first player in that round. And then at the next round, you're going to be the last player in that round. And for me, it lost a little bit of the engagement level. That's the one piece that I struggled with. Number one, that there was that huge span of time where there was no action on my part. And then two was that I didn't have any control over where it would be. And I think that would be nice to have something in the game that you had to do that was based on your skill level or your ability or luck that would change the order instead of just being dictated.
Yeah, like Castle of Burgundy, for example, where you can take a action, moves the boat up, and you can get to be the first player, or in a worker placement game where you place something on a board and it gives you the first player token. You're right. This was definitely just turn order. And because of the drafting of the dice did lead to some big downtime on certain turns. So yeah, fair enough. Adam, anything else on mechanisms?
Yeah, just like Jen said, the turns can get long. That's the only downer, not to bum things out. But to bring things back up, if we were in person, and we got to a little bit tonight online too, if you're in person, you're just BSing with the other people at the table, having some drinks of Coke or whatever you want to drink.
Maybe some mint tea.
While, the person's comboing up for 15 points or long turns, but you can hang out with your friends, and that's nothing wrong with that. On to the next thing, the scoring for this. I want to talk about that because you start on the top left and you're crossing out the gold numbers, and you start on the top right and you're crossing out the silver numbers. And once those intersect, you're trying to reduce your gap between those. And once those intersect, first place that triggers the end game, and each person after that gets a turn. I thought that was kind of a neat scoring mechanism. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, I really like that. In fact, that is actually exactly the way that scoring in the original Rajas of the Ganges game plays. And it's pretty neat because it's similar. Like one side is, glory or whatever the yellow track is. But in the Rajas, in the main base game, the other side is income. And so as you move up that silver track, they do a couple different things. Like one of the tracks releases more workers, kind of gives you bonuses like the silver track did here. But the other one gives you like extra income, so more money that you can use for doing things in your turn. And so it's cool. They have two different functions, a little bit more so in the main board game than they did in this roll and write version. But it's cool that you have two different tracks. You get, can move up them based on different actions you're doing. But it's trying to get those things together instead of just trying to score one particular thing. Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's unique to this game series, but I think it worked really well in both of those games.
And I will say, as someone who hasn't had as much gameplay experience as either one of you two, I really enjoyed something new because I'd never seen scoring done that way. And so I appreciated that. And my thought that never actually came out of my mouth during the game was, hey, is there any other games that are like this? Because I kind of like the dwindling number, like the get to zero component of it. Yeah, it'd be a question I would ask in the future.
I can't think of any others that do it quite like this. So I think that was kind of a standout feature of the original version of the game. And again, I think because it stood out, they wanted to carry that over here. I think they did a good job. It made it really fun. And it was fun to kind of watch us instead of saying, we're just trying to get to a certain score or the game's going to end when something happens. This time it was like, let's watch that gap, shrink between players and who's got the lowest score gap. And it was fun. It kind of shifted the conversation a little bit in the focus.
Yep. Gap to goal.
We haven't talked a whole lot about what you're doing on the board. For example, one of the areas of the board is a river area around the bottom. And it's just like a little set of different bonuses that you take. Think of like a parks type of game, right? Where, basically once you move up to a certain point in the board, you can't go back. And this kind of worked the same way. So in this blue section of the bottom of the board, the river, if the dice that you picked match an icon on the top of one of those sections, you would move as to the next one that matches that icon and get the bonus below it. But it was an interesting decision because you might really want to move up the river, but you're going to skip over a whole bunch of rewards that you can't get back to and accomplish again. So I thought that was really fun. And then like you go to the purple section of the board, which is the good section, things on the board that will trigger or dice that will trigger where you can basically buy goods. So you circle these little goods on the board, but then in other areas of the board, there are opportunities to sell those goods, which you cross them off and then you get points related to them. And the more goods you sell, the more points you get. And then if you sell 2 columns, you get a bonus for it. So just all kinds of little different things that are very simple actions that are happening here that trigger off of each other and combo off of each other. I thought it was fun that the 4 different activities that you're focusing on the board added some variety instead of it just being like one solitary focus. And I'd like to see if you played this a few times, do you want to kind of stretch out and be involved in all these different areas, or do you want to try to focus heavily in a couple areas and see if that really scores better? So this is a game that I'd love to explore some more, see where you can focus your strategy, or is it just very tactical and you're just taking the things that are available and trying to combo those off of each other? But I have a feeling that this is a game where you can get better at it and you can kind of find opportunities to optimize your game. So it's something to explore a little bit.
I want to call out, there's an element of tempo here, and Steve did it really nice tonight. He had a big old combo turn, and he reduced his gap pretty well. We thought he was going to finish it on his next turn, but he ended up at like a 0.5 gap or a 1.5 gap, and that kind of worked to his advantage because his next turn he could set up another combo and then get some nice overlap. Instead of a gap between his gold track and his silver track, they overlapped and put him in the positive, so to speak, while the rest of us were still chasing him from behind. So he triggered the game in on a nice big score, and it left us kind of flailing to catch him up. Not only for that in game, but during the game too, you're kind of setting up these combos and knocking them down and timing that out. There's a nice element to that as to how you want to build up goods in your purple tint areas and then being able to knock those all down kind of at the same time, for instance. Very nice tempo aspect to this game.
Yeah, it was funny that with the dice, the 4 different colors of dice you could choose, one of the types of dice, all it does is it gives you 2 goods. And you there's no combo to be had with that little thing on its own, but there's a lot of value if you can build up those goods and sell them later and get the combos off of them. So that was an interesting decision. Like I almost never wanted to pick the purple goods, but if I really mapped it out, I have a feeling that sometimes those purple goods would be some of the more valuable tiles, maybe especially in the earlier game, where you can build those up and then set yourselves up to sell them on other combos later on. So it was an interesting decision point where it seemed like there was clear, better tiles there, but I don't think it's as clear as it seems at a first look. So let's talk about the production of this game. We played this on Yucata today, which is generally a very ugly platform, but we appreciate you anyway, Yucata, in case you hear this. But basically what this is in the real production is just a tablet of paper, like many roll and writes, and 8 dice of 4 different colors with a bunch of little icons on it. So what do you guys think of the production that you know of, since we didn't actually play the physical copy? Anything that stood out to you? Adam, why don't you start?
So just from looking at photos on Board Game Geek, it looks nice. It looks clean. The dice look cute. Just in general, the animation is kind of cute and cartoony a little bit, I would say. But I do want to give some props to the Yucata implementation on this game. I'd almost prefer playing it. We were talking about this all night too, because Yucata notifies you of this combination that you might have missed, and this bonus and this bonus and that bonus, and it crosses off and makes the X's for you. So it really does a nice job of doing all the admin and showing you your options. Of course, it has the undo function on there too. So you're like, well, what if I want to do this combination of this? So you can kind of, as much as the other people you're playing with will permit you, kind of go back and run through your options and maximize your points. So very nice implementation on Yucata.
Yeah, that's a great point, Adam. This may be one of those rare cases where playing online may be a better experience than playing in person, because there's not a lot as far as physical components. So you don't get you're not missing out on a lot of tactile experience here, other than just rolling the dice. I think it's going to save a lot of headaches and a lot of overhead. It's hard to rank this and know how this would play in real life or whether that would really be an issue, but it feels like it could. It feels like that could be a thing that would really set it back as a physical production. Jen, any comments on the production of the game?
My comment during it was a little cartoony. So on that one, Adam and I disagree on the cartoony nature of it. Definitely was not something that drew my eyes to it in an enjoyable fashion. looking at it when it's not on Yucata, it's definitely a little sharper, a little cleaner. So I can respect it a little bit more that way. I think I would love to read the directions and go through and actually physically read the instructions. Like, I think I looked at them online. There's like 12 pages, which actually isn't that much, in order to really know what the icons mean and not have to ask someone what this is. Like, and some of these, and I'm asking Adam and Tim now, we call these, the orange dice were workers or assistants.
Like assistants, I think is what Steve told us they were when he taught us the game.
Yeah. And they each did something, and it took me a little while to figure out what they meant. And I think if I had read through the directions and physically seen that visually first, that would have been really helpful. But I enjoyed it. I thought that, it's prettier to look at, more enjoyable to look at than my fave, Castles of Burgundy. But don't worry, Castles of Burgundy, I'm only cheating on you a little bit. So, but I did like it.
That is not a high bar to beat. Looking better than Castles of Burgundy. Yeah, for me, this is not like, a tablet of paper is not exciting production, and I agree that the iconography, the layout of the paper and the iconography is not impressive in any way. The art on it, and this contrasts quite a bit with the original Rajas of the Ganges board game, which is a beautiful production, a very lavish, detailed board. And you can see why. There's a lot more space to work with there. There's a lot more that they can do with the physical components in that case. But yeah, from just looking at this, it is not something that really is attractive, other than the variety of iconography just gets me intrigued and excited. So let's jump into our favorite moments of the game. I'll start with this. I thought that it was moving along, at the beginning. I felt like I had a really good handle really quickly on what was going on. I was comboing some stuff. I had a little bit of a score lead. And then about mid-game, I completely lost it. Like, I dropped to the bottom of the barrel, and I didn't think I'd even have a chance at catching up. And I didn't catch up, but I got really close, and that was fun. Steve ended up with a -4 score gap, so he was the winner. He beat us pretty significantly. Adam pulled it down to a 2 gap, which was great. He beat me right in the last round, but I got all the way down to 3.5, and I was like 10 points behind the next person at one point. So it was really cool to see some of those big combos pull together. And this is one of those games where it doesn't feel like you are going to know the winner at the beginning. There's not going to be a clear leader. I think everybody has a chance to be able to pull some things together and pull off a win. And I like that. I like when a game kind of leaves that mystery hanging to the end. And so there were a couple of moments where the scores just shifted, and that made me satisfied to know that opportunity existed here. What about you, Jen? Any big moments for you in this game?
It was the third or fourth round when it all started to gel, and like the puzzle in my brain became clearer, and I was able to make the decisions without asking someone else a question or like, clarify this for me, or almost, looking at someone else's board. They chose this, so I'll chose this, because that's how I sailed through the first couple rounds. But then I got it, and then I felt the first dopamine hit of getting a good combo, and then I actually sailed to the front of the pack for quite some time, and that felt pretty awesome as well. And then I didn't win. I may have not come in second either, or maybe even third, but I did place. Therefore, I was here.
This should really be called Rajas of the Ganges, the dopamine charmers, because it is all over the place here. You just get so many exciting little hits of, basically everything you do is giving you something, which is great, but then when you can combo that something and then get something else and then combo something else. And we were joking because in Yucata, it keeps a log of your actions, basically like what you do on your turn. And so you would see someone having a pretty good turn, and the lines might be like 6 or 7 lines long in the log. Oh, that was a good turn. And we were joking earlier on, like, hey, if somebody can fill up the whole page with their log, that's going to be an awesome turn. And I managed to almost do it. Like, I was like 2 lines away from it. So it's just fun how much stuff you can do just by rolling a dice and crossing off a little thing on a board, and that triggers another stuff. So definitely a lot of dopamine there. What about you, Adam? Any favorite moments in the game tonight?
Yeah, you guys touched on it, the highs and the lows of this game. I think we all had moments. I remember Tim was like, oh, I got it. And then he did a turn. He'd be like, yeah, what's up? And he'd be like singing his little song and talking smack. And then same thing. I had a nice move where I was like in the lead and talking a little crap, like, oh, there's a lower number better and this and that. And then so all of us had that sense of like, check me out, I'm awesome at this board game. And Jen too, when she got in the lead, she's like, what's up? And then, of course, like Sleepy Steve pulls it out in the end and crushes all of us. So I thought that was great. Just the highs and the lows. Not really any lows, just like all riding high and then watching Steve pull it out. It was just it gives a nice little feeling. It's such a tiny little sheet. All that info on tiny sheet and 8 dice does a great job.
Yeah, that's funny. Again, you mentioned the lowest. It's funny, Adam, earlier on, I think, third or fourth round, you were like, oh man, I don't think I can win this game. I don't think I can come back. And then you ended up turning it around by the mid to late game where you were like significantly ahead of the rest of us for a good portion of it. So we all had that last place and we all had the first place at some point in the game. And that was really fun.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. So let's jump into our final question on this game. Would you request to play this game again? And I'll just lead on this one. I absolutely would. I had a great time with it. It was quite a surprise to me, actually. When somebody tells me they're going to bring out a roll and write, I'm mostly turned off and not that interested. And this one was quite a lot of fun. I had a great time every single turn, the decisions I was making, the combos I was making. I can't wait to play it again. But does it have staying power? I think it does. I think this actually has quite a bit of interesting game in there. We played on I guess it's a 2-sided sheet. Yukata recommended this one side for a basic game, and I had a blast on this. I'm kind of curious what the backside would be, how that changes things. But because of the way the dice dictate your decisions, I don't think that there's like a clear one path. So I think every game is going to be taking those tactical choices and trying to push certain combos together. And it just seems like it seems like a lot of fun to me. So this is probably my surprise of the year, to be honest, of a game that I didn't have any expectations for and was quite surprised and impressed by. So we'll definitely be asking for this one again. How about you, Jen?
I mean, I feel like we succeeded and had a great time playing this game against all odds, right? Tim drove yesterday. What was that, like 6 or 7 hours?
7 hours, yeah.
7 hours. This is late for me. I'm not going to tell the audience what time it is right now, but I am way past my bedtime. And, I have little children, a full-time job. And I was like, oh, we're going to play a second game. Okay. Smile, Jen. It's going to be great. Smile, Jen. It's going to be great. It was a really, really good time. And so I'm so glad that we got to do this because originally Steve did say it was going to take a shorter amount of time. He said like half an hour to 45 minutes. Yes. I was like, okay, I can handle that. And It ended up because, the teaching time and, us chatting and it being 4 players, I think it was about an hour and a half, but it didn't feel like that, which was nice, except when my turn came first and then last in the next round. It was a surprise. I guess that it was as exciting as it was. I can see that the dopamine hits, the way it makes my brain feel, are going to make me want to play it again. I started touching on the fact that, Tim drove 7 hours. So him and Danielle are in a different location right now than in the same city as me. And while they were gone, they promised that they would play Castles of Burgundy online with me. But I think that this is a very good chance that Danielle would like to learn this one or would enjoy learning this one. So I'm hoping actually that sometime that we can play this one online.
Well, first I can tell you Danielle will absolutely not want to learn this game because she hates learning new games, and having to teach her this iconography, she's going to be so not interested. So you'll have to do some serious convincing on that front. But I was curious, though, you mentioned again the, kind of the wait time, especially when you go first and then you go last. Do you think that is something that, do you think it's something that would build up to a point where you wouldn't want to play it because of that? Or do you think it's something that would go away as you got a little bit more plays in and, things paced up a little bit more? Do you think that's something that you're concerned about turning you off on future plays?
I think it's unique in this case to the online experience and the time of day that we played. We played really late at night. And so those two things put together are what did that. So again, I would play it if we played it at noon on a Saturday with 4 people again, or if we played it, at 7 o'clock on a Monday with, 2 or 3 people, I'd be curious to see how it went, just to see if that wait time was still there. And then of course, I would be really curious to play it in person because I've always said that I pause online games, not pause, but the gameplay will slow down to talk. Whereas I feel like if we're doing it in person, we can actually talk and play at the same time. And so that's what I think slowed this one down as well.
Yeah, agreed on that. Yeah. And then the fact that happened many times where one of us would try to start a conversation and then somebody would be waiting to ask a question about the gameplay. And that doesn't happen as much in real life. So yeah, good points. Okay. What about you, Adam? Would you request to play this game again?
I am looking forward to the next play of this one for sure. And on your guys' point, I think in person too, you could almost, so the first person would select a die and then they'd get to jail the other die of that color. And then you could almost have the other people select their die and think about it for 30 seconds. And if that's the one they want, they put it on their mat, and then the next guy could put theirs on their mat and the next guy there on, and then they combo it out on their player board.
Yeah.
So there's not that big lull. You pick your dice and then you move on with doing your branching combos. So it might speed it up in person a lot. Yeah,
that's a great point. And Adam, I know interaction is usually pretty important to you, other than the the dice drafting, there really isn't any interaction here. How did that feel to you in this case? Was it still okay?
For some reason, I had a great time playing this one. Yeah. So pick the dice, and then when it's not your turn, BS with Jen, BS with the other, Tim or Steve, whoever. And because that's really what it is. When you're comboing, you're just kind of doing your own thing and talking to Yukata, really. And the other three people can just kind of do what they're doing while they're waiting for you to reduce your gap.
Cool. Okay. Well, it sounds like this was a little bit of a surprise for all of us tonight. So great to discover a little gem when you're not expecting it. Okay. I think that'll wrap up our conversation on Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers, and that will wrap up our episode of Board Game Hot Takes today. Tell us what you thought of our takes on the games we played today. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for having me.